Hello and welcome to Rando Rob. Each week on Rando Rob, I'll be showing and discussing one item from my large collection of collections. New shows appear every Monday, and throughout the week, I'll be adding older episodes of Rando Rob that were previously only available to my Patreon subscribers. You can watch episodes of Rando Rob on YouTube at youtube.com/Rob O'Hara. Just look for the Rando Rob playlist. Audio versions of the show are available on my website at podcast.robohara.com or through iTunes. Just search for Rando Rob. Thanks for watching or listening, and I hope you enjoy this vintage episode of Rando Rob. A friend of mine recently mailed me a couple of videotapes, and these videotapes are old VHS tapes that he recorded off of MTV of videos. And he sent them to me because he knows that I have right above my head right here a VCR, which is connected to my computer. And it allows me, I have a Hauppauge video capture card, and that allows me to capture VHS tapes into the computer. Now, you may know on my normal YouTube channel, on YouTube/Rob O'Hara, I have a playlist there of VHS commercials, which are commercials that I have pulled off of VHS tapes. Right here, I have a stack of VHS tapes that I was just going through. These are ones that belong to our family that I've been digitizing, but there's never a shortage of videotapes. Actually, that's not true. There is a shortage of videotapes. Why would I say there's never a shortage? There's the kind of videotapes that I'm normally interested in are ones like this. Let me grab this one off the bottom of the stack here, where this is, first of all, this is a super old style cassette holder. I mean, you could look at it and see this is not a modern VHS tape, but then when you look on the side, and this actually is one from our family, but it's Star Wars, and then I believe my dad recorded this off of TV, and then took all the little peel-off labels that used to come with VHS tapes and put this. So this is the kind of tapes when I used to go to thrift stores that I would always jump at. I mean, if I saw a tape that, this is one that I got from a thrift store. But if I saw something like this, you go, oh, what is that? And you look, and then it's got handwriting, and you go, oh, what is this handwriting on here? And so this handwriting on this particular tape says, Health Video, November 2004, and then it has 4 people's last names written on here, and it actually has, they say what their school is on this tape, and this is a homework assignment that they did for like some sort of PE class. It's very funny. It's like a 10-minute skit that a bunch of kids made about being healthy and stuff. Actually, you know what? Just because I'm a nice guy, not because I think anybody would do anything, I will cover this up. But on the top of the label, if you can see that, it has their first names and last names. So I did look them up, and they're all on Facebook. So maybe someday I'll upload that to YouTube and then send them a link. But anyway, so those are the kind of VHS tapes that I typically look for. But the problem is that the mainstream thrift stores don't carry those. Like Goodwill doesn't put those kind of tapes out. Goodwill only puts out store-bought tapes. I think Salvation Army only puts out purchase tapes. Now, Habitat for Humanity, their Restore place, they put out those. There were a couple of like independent thrift stores that were near me that used to put out tapes like that, and they all went out of business. So sometimes I'll find them at garage sales. Actually, I find them a lot at estate sales. I just don't go to very many estate sales. And of course, the dream is, what is the dream? I think the dream number one is finding, I think that the top tier dream for me would be finding videotapes from the 80s, which is tough to do, that would be off of local broadcast television. Because you're going to get commercials from the 1980s and possibly local commercials that aren't archived anywhere else, right? So that would be probably the top tier, and then anything after that would be stuff from the 80s or 90s with the commercials intact. That's you find a lot of tapes where people tape 2 or 3 movies off of HBO, and unless there's the interesting filler in between the movies, it's just not that great to have a HBO copy of a movie that I probably own on DVD or Blu-ray. Anyway, so I've gone down a rabbit hole. That's why I have the VCR setup. That's not why I had it to archive our own personal home videotapes, because these VHS tapes just don't last forever. That's just they are analog and they are slowly dying. So anyway, what I was going to show you today is 2 videotapes. Now, when I started setting up my movie room, I was coming up with different ideas that would be like fun display ideas to show off different things. And one of the ideas I came up with was some sort of shelf when you would go into the movie room, and it would have like my top 10 favorite movies of all time. But I didn't really know how I was going to make that display. Like, was I going to print them on paper, make a poster? So I don't know, but just that idea of like, hey, you're coming into my personal home movie room, and these are the movies that represent me. And so anyway, it hit me one day. I was at a thrift store, and I thought, you know what would be a cool idea is to get VHS tapes of my 10 favorite movies. And actually, I think 9 would work better, and you could do it in a 3x3 grid or something like that. But, that kind of became the idea to get my favorite movies on VHS. And then you start thinking, what are my favorite movies? Well, one is Star Wars, and I have Star Wars on VHS. So that would be an easy one. But I don't have a lot of my favorite movies on VHS. So then, once I came up with the idea, I started looking for my favorite movies on VHS. Now, spoiler, you could go to YouTube, or not YouTube, you could go to eBay, and I could buy all 9 of them probably in one day. But I don't want to spend $10 for movies that I'm not going to watch in a format I'm not going to watch them in, just to display them. My idea was, hey, when I go to these thrift stores like Goodwill and other places that have store-bought tapes, I'll look through the tapes and see if any of my favorite movies are in there. And if they are, I'll pick them up. And then that would be the idea for the display. So I didn't really have this, whatever this top 10 movie list was. So then I started thinking, you know what, it could just be 10 movies that I really like. So it didn't have to be like my all-time favorite list that never changes, blah, 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 whatever. No, it could just be a display of like, here's a 3x3 selection of VHS tapes. And when you walk in, you're like, oh, that's cool. And every one of those movies would be like, I love that movie. I love that movie. That movie's a classic, all movies, that I enjoyed. Slight sidetrack. When I set up the poster Pi, which is the Raspberry Pi that shows movie posters on a giant flat screen television, it basically emulates having movie posters hanging on the wall because it changes once a minute. I love it. But I have different collections of movie posters that I put on. Actually, the Pi reads the posters from a folder on my server. And so all I have to do is change the posters that are in that folder on the server and reboot the Pi, and the Pi reboots on its own every night at midnight, and it rescans those files and builds its display list based on what's in that folder. So if I'm having a horror movie night, I have a folder that's just also the script scans folders or directories and subdirectories. So what I can do is I have this folder that's like poster Pi, right? And I can drag everything out of it, and I can drag in a folder called horror. which I have made a folder called horror, which only has movie posters of horror movies. And I could drag that in there, reboot the pie, it rebuilds the list, and then it just shows the horror things, right? Well, I have one called My Favorite Movies, and I mean, it has 300 or 400 posters in there, and that's the one I normally leave in there, and I drop and drag that one in there, and then instead of having to delete files and this, that, I just go to my Windows server and I pull the one that says horror out of that directory, because I have a separate directory where I store them all, and drag in the one that says favorites and reboot the pie, and now it's just my favorite movies. But I set personal, I don't know what you want to call it, guidelines of what goes in the favorite one, and everyone that's in the favorite is a movie that I have to say, okay, I've seen this movie X amount of times, and I can talk intelligently about that movie. So normally the favorites is the one that's in there. When people go in, they look at it and they go, oh, it's Cannonball Run. And then I go, oh yeah, Cannonball Run. And I can tell you the plot, and I know who's in it, and I know, you know what I mean? So there's like, I have a folder that's called like all movies or whatever. It has like 15,000 movie posters. And when I put that one in there, when you go and look, you'll get folders. I mean, you'll get movie posters of movies I haven't seen. I mean, they look cool, but I can't talk about it. Somebody will go, what's that? I go, don't know, I haven't seen it, you know. So the favorites one is that. So anyway, that was the idea of the display of the VHS tapes, was that they would all be movies that I could say, that's one of my favorite movies. Like any movie that was on this VHS display when you walked in would be a movie that I would say, if someone said, you want to watch that movie right now? I'd go, okay. And it's one that I'd be willing to throw in and immediately watch. So I kind of started making this mental list in my head, like Tron is going to be on that list. Blade Runner is on that list, and I have a copy of Blade Runner on VHS. So I had this kind of list percolating in my head a little bit. And it's more the type of thing where it's not like I go, well, it was. I should strike that. There were movies like Blade Runner where I go, I'm keeping an eye out for Blade Runner. So if I see Blade Runner, I'm going to buy it on VHS, and that will go on the display. But a lot of it was just like, I'm just going to keep an eye open. I'm just going to be watching, and kind of one of those situations where you go, I'll know it when I see it. Like I'll go to the thrift store, and when I see a movie on VHS, I'll be like, that's going on the list, right? And I even thought, okay, because if you know me, I'll build this display to hold 9 movies, but I may have 20 or 30 on VHS, and then I could switch them out, just because that's who I am. So anyway, one of the very first movies that had to go on this list is 1983's WarGames. Now, I could talk about WarGames for a long time. I could tell you an awful lot about WarGames. If you subscribe to this Patreon, I suspect you are familiar with WarGames, at least peripherally. You've probably seen WarGames. You know that Matthew Broderick is a hacker, and he almost starts World War III because he wants to play games, and he dials into the Whopper, yada, yada, yada. Okay. When WarGames came out in 1983, I was 10 years old, and we had just got our Apple II. Now, I've talked about this before. It's not an Apple II. It's a Franklin Ace 1000. It was an Apple II clone, but it replaced our TRS-80. It came with a monitor. It came with disk drives, which our TRS-80 did not have, and it came with a modem. Now, whenever you first get your modem, there's a funny scene in the movie. It's not a funny scene. It's a running joke in the movie Hackers, where the one kid who's kind of a poser, I think his name is Joey, but the whole time he's like, I need an alias, man. I need a name. I need an alias. And he's like trying so hard, and that was kind of a real thing back then, where it was like you had to pick an alias that represented who you were, and there were some really bad ones. I mean, I remember so many, like there was a guy named the Rad Dude, and there was, the Surf Man, and, just all these different really bad, aliases. And I, because we had this Franklin Ace, I picked the name Robbie Franklin because everybody knew me as Robbie when I was a little kid. And I was like, oh, I have a Franklin computer. And so I was like, I'll be Robbie Franklin. And everybody was like, that is a terrible alias. First of all, nobody knew it was an alias. They all just thought it was my real name. And I was like, no, it's really an alias. And they were like, that's a terrible alias. Of course, and I do want to remind you in this story, I'm 10 years old. So not the best judgment. So then I was like, I need to come up with another alias. And this was right when WarGames came out. And I was like, I'm going to be David Lightman. David Lightman is Matthew Broderick's character in WarGames. But it's also not a good alias because, I mean, if you think about it, it does also sound like a real person's name. It's not any better than Robbie Franklin. So the following year, just to wrap up that story, is the following year is when the movie Cloak and Dagger came out. Cloak and Dagger starred Henry Thomas, the kid from E.T., and Dabney Coleman, who also is in WarGames. He is the guy that he's in charge of the Whopper, the war computer, So I always liked Dabney Coleman. I like Dabney Coleman in WarGames because he wasn't really the military guy. He was the computer guy. So I've always kind of thought of myself as kind of that a similar role in life because, his duty is to the government and the computer system. So that's his priority. But he does understand the hacking kid. He does relate a little bit to Matthew Broderick, And so he's kind of like the interpreter. He's the guy that goes to management and goes, hey, this is what's going on. But then he understands what's going on the computer side as well, right? And so, and I mean, for a long time, that's kind of what I did at work. It was a similar role. But anyway, so like I said, to wrap this part of the story up, is Dabney Coleman went on to star in Cloak and Dagger with Henry Thomas. And as you may know, his character in that movie was Jack Flack. And so instead of sticking with Robbie Franklin and instead of becoming David Lightman, I said, you know what, a cool name is Jack Flack. And so I picked the alias Jack Flack in 1984, and I have been going online by Jack Flack or just Flack ever since. Actually, when I got on IRC, the internet chat in 1994, it would only handle 8 characters. And so you couldn't put... And it wouldn't take spaces. I don't think it would take spaces. So you couldn't put Jack Flack with a space, and you couldn't put Jack Flack without a space because that was 9 characters. And so I just, I tried different variations for a little bit. I tried Flack 405, which is my area code. I tried J Flack, which I never liked the aesthetic. I don't like the look of it. And finally, I just dropped it to Flack. Now, there are other Flacks online. There's somebody that owns flack.org and flack.net. I've looked at trying to purchase those over the years. And there's a Flack guy that has Flack on Twitter. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole. So that was kind of, boy, I keep watching my mic levels and they keep maxing out, but hopefully this all turns out. But anyway, that's a different story. Cloak and Dagger is a different story. But kind of, the first mainstream thing that I saw that, I felt like got who I was and what I was doing was WarGames, And, of course, Matthew Broderick in the movie is a little bit older than I was. I was in 3rd grade when WarGames came out. But here's this high school guy, who's trying to change his grades, does change his grades by dialing in with or changes his girlfriend's grades by dialing in with the computer and all this. In fact, I was such a fan of WarGames that David Lightman, if you can see in the screenshot that's up there, he is wearing a blue hoodie with a green undershirt, a green t-shirt. I have that outfit hanging in my closet right now. I have always had a blue hoodie, and I always have a green pocket tee. And many years ago, we had the opportunity to hire Kevin Mitnick to come to our work and speak about social engineering. It was right when he was getting started with his current business, so we got it in a really good opportune time. And also, my wife was the person who got to pick the presentation and the speaker, so that worked in my favor. And when I met him, and I got to hang out with Kevin Mitnick for a couple of days while he was in Oklahoma. I was his chauffeur. I was his at work, like I had to be with him because it was federal property, and this was at the time one of the most notorious hackers in the world, and so we couldn't just let him run around unabated. And so, anyhow. So I got to spend a lot of time with Kevin Mitnick, inside work and outside work, and we still occasionally talk. And but his business took off, and he went on to had a lot of success in that. But we do still occasionally exchange pleasantries online. Anyway, when I met Kevin Mitnick, I wore that outfit. I wore the green T-shirt and I wore the blue hoodie, and he did not get the reference. And I was like, it's the David Lightman outfit from WarGames. And then he got it. He was like, that's funny, But I mean, that movie just made such a huge impact on me. I mean, and then for what I was doing on computers for the next 5 or 10 years. And it made a big impact on a lot of people my age, and everybody, all kinds of kids and teens that were into home computers and stuff. It was a big deal. So the reason why I'm giving you this very, 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 very long-winded introduction into all this is to show you that when I decided to build this little project, one of the first movies that I sought out was this one. This is WarGames on VHS. And what I want to find, there's a reason I'm looking for this. This is copyright 1983, FBI, don't copy this. This says VHS, but I'm looking for a date. I probably won't be able to find it on here while I'm looking. But traditionally, the movie WarGames, I don't know if it was always like this. I think it probably was. But the font, so WarGames was in all capital letters, but the W and the G were bigger capital letters. So this is the way that the font was originally, and it's all one word. So whenever you see WarGames, it should be written as one word, I suppose. But then on the front of this, you've got MGM / United Artists, and the WarGames is at the top. And then the pictures that are in there in the middle there, this part up here, this is whenever he goes to NORAD, and this is all the displays of the WarGames. And then at the bottom here, we've got Matthew Broderick looking into the computer playing the game. So this is, kind of tells you the story. This is the kid at home. He's on his computer. This is the WarGame that's playing, and then it says WarGames. So anyway, if there's one thing that you should know about me that all my friends know, actually, if there's two things. One is that I love to tell stories, and two is that I have a terrible memory. And so it's very likely, if you've been around me more than a few times, that I will tell you the same story. I have actually had a very real fear of doing the same podcast topic more than once, which is why I track all of the topics in a spreadsheet. And I started at one point trying to track all the stories that I told on each podcast for that specific reason. And I never finished that. And it has come back to bite me a few times. I know that I've repeated myself on podcasts. So anyway, I know that I've told the story about Robbie Franklin, but that's okay because we're just chatting for Rando Rob time. So anyway, The reason why I say that is because then I went into a thrift store one day and I was looking around for movies that I thought I would love, and I found one. I found a tape that would go on my display, and it's this. WarGames. And as you might notice, the logo is down here where it says WarGames, not up here. And it has this big silver thing. Other than that, the front artwork looks good. And so, yes, I forgot that I had purchased WarGames, and then I purchased WarGames on VHS a second time. Now, the funny thing about this is that I never finished the project. I never built the thing that would display the movies, and I stopped buying the movies for the project. So I really only have, as I look over there, I have Blade Runner, I have a skateboard video that probably wouldn't make the cut, and 2 copies of WarGames. I do know that there have been some. There's the collection of is it Titanic? No, or Jerry Maguire or Titanic? I can't remember where they the Something Awful people have. No, not Something Awful. That's a different group. Everything is Terrible. Who they have built like they're buying hundreds and hundreds of thousands of the same VHS tape, and so I suppose I could do a display just of WarGames tapes, and I could buy every variation of WarGames tapes and put them. That wouldn't be very exciting to look at. So anyway, the first thing I will say is that I'm gonna say that this one, even though it has this big silver thing, so I used to think that this one was newer. But now that I'm looking at it here, I think perhaps it's older. And here's why I'm going to say that. And that's why I was looking for a publication date. But as you can see, well, first of all, it has this logo, which I don't know if this is a newer or older way. I feel like this is older, looks older than that. You know, like this would be an older style. But also, if you look at the bottom of this one, it says VHS and it says hi-fi stereo. But this other one has it says hi-fi VHS or whatever, but above that it has the logo for Dolby. I don't know if you can see that. It says Dolby stereo. So I feel like the green one might be the newer release, like they re-released it. The one with the white font on the side, which is this one here, you can see it only has one pull-out picture, and the other one has 3 pictures. So this one just looks a little bit more dated, I suppose, than the other one. So I'm not really sure. I guess I could look up on release numbers or something and try to find out. Although they both have the same MGM number. It's M200293. So 200-293. But that doesn't really help us because they both have the same number. I guess we could look at the 2 tapes. I don't know. But you know what? This one says MGM/United Artists. And this one, no, they both say MGM United Artists. So I don't know. I don't know which one's newer and which one's older. I suspect, I may have to get to the bottom of this mystery, but I suspect that the one with the white writing on the side is the older of the 2. So anyway, so I started, to sum this up, I started a collection of VHS tapes for a display of my favorite movies. I ended up purchasing 3 tapes for that collection, and this is 2 of them, WarGames and WarGames. So it turned out to be a very small collection. I am behind, as always. I'm always behind. I'm behind on everything. I do have a good excuse, though. A lot of times I'm behind because I'm being lazy or because I haven't got around to things. But I'm behind on podcasts at the moment because I've spent most of Memorial Day weekend laying inside an empty cargo van that I've been working on. So I may have to add over in my little plug things on the side for Sprite Castle and podcast.robohara.com. I may have to add the Big Rob's Van .com. Maybe I'll add that as a sliding ad that shows up on there. I know the van stuff is not for everybody, and I said that I'm going to stop talking about it on Rando Rob and on my podcast, so I will. But it is consuming an inordinate amount of time and energy at the moment, and I haven't even really got started. I'm still in deconstruction mode. I'm still taking things out of the van and getting the van prepared so that I can put things in the van. So if you want to find out what's going on with the van, go to bigrobsvan.com. If you don't and you want to find out what's going on with me, just go to robohara.com. And if you want to see the latest podcasts or check out old episodes of podcasts, go to podcast.robohara.com. I have sitting on the screen in front of me the script ready to go for Like a DOS. And so we will be doing Like a DOS today. That will be coming out today. Period. That will be coming out today. And then hopefully I can move things along so by the end of this week I will have the new episode of Sprite Castle as well. I feel bad for old poor Cactus Flax. It's in the background, and it's just because, I don't know, I'm just having... there's two things. Number one, when it's the fourth, it's the one that gets bumped, because when things get pushed back, push, the one that's at the end of the list gets bumped. And number two, I'm just having a hard time getting excited about it because it's reviewing old machines that I don't own anymore, And so it's just talking about things. Every single one ends the same way. Well, I enjoyed that and I sold it. So I will eventually finish that one. But until then, I'll be keeping on with Sprite Castle and You Don't Know Flack and Rando Rob and every day I fight every ounce of energy to make myself forget about starting a van podcast. Like every time I think about it, I punch myself in the head and go, "Don't you dare!" There's plenty of them out there to listen to, so I'll listen to them. And listening to them is better than doing them. So anyway, thanks you guys for all the support. Of course, again, I hope you had a safe, most importantly, and enjoyable Memorial Day weekend. Like a DOS will be coming out later this afternoon, and I think that covers everything. So thanks for jumping in, and I will be talking to you all soon. I'm going to post this later on Patreon. But I think I figured out a way to do a live chat with patrons only on YouTube. So that might be a thing.